Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show, coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska, where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Thank you, Scott. Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Must Read Alaska coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is a reader-driven and a listener-driven conservative news project launched in 2015. And this month, we're celebrating our first 6 years of bringing you the conservative side of the news. We started out as a small but mighty newsletter, and we just couldn't keep a good thing down. It just grew and grew. And what do we do now? We've got the website at mustreadalaska.com. It's all about Alaska for Alaskans. And we keep the mainstream media on their toes there. We like to counter the liberal bias that's just too prevalent in today's news sources, especially in Alaska. What else do? We'll have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday newsletter with updates and special items that you don't get those anywhere else, not even on the website. And we have Club MRAC, which is the daily legislative bulletin that goes through the rest of the session. And that gives you the skinny on what's going on in Juneau during the legislative season. Besides that, we've got this show, of course, and we've got our YouTube channel where we feature political video content and got to check that out. Sometimes our content is also on Rumble because YouTube is a censoring kind of a place, and we've got some content that we have to put out on Rumble. I'm Suzanne Downing, and I'm just really glad to be joined by my co-host today, John Quick, on Nikiski, down in Nikiski. And John, what's going on the Kenai Peninsula today?
Well, thank you so much, Suzanne Downing. This is John Quick here out in the great Kenai Peninsula, which is sunny and about 35 degrees. The snow is melting and roads are becoming crazy, but we don't mind that because that just means spring is either here or just around the corner. Some exciting news for us on the Kenai. This week, Governor Dunleavy is coming to the Kenai, and which is exciting for us. He's going to probably be making a number of stops. I know that he is very keen on getting the Silvertip Road Maintenance Station to be open. Him and Peter Machicki have been working on that together. And, I think that that's exciting for us. Anytime that the governor can stop in, whether you agree with him or not, is a time for him to see what's happening with real people, getting conversations with real people. It gets folks like that out of the bubble of Anchorage or Juneau or whatever bubble they're in, into having real interactions with real people. So that's exciting. Another big thing on the Kenai is Kelly Tshibaka, who has thrown her name in the hat to run against Lisa Murkowski for U.S. Senate, is going to be doing kind of like a grassroots meet and greet all over the peninsula. So I'm just going to real quickly kind of read off where she's stopping and times that she's stopping there. So folks, if you're interested, if you live on the Kenai, these are open to the public events, and you can stop in and chat with Kelly and talk to her about issues that you care about. And I'm sure she would love to hear from you. So at 10 a.m., she's going to be, this is Thursday, April 8th. At 10 a.m., she's going to be on Sound Off, which is one of our big radio shows here on the Kenai Peninsula.
Love that.
Dwayne Bannock. Dwayne Bannock will keep you on your toes. He was tall, dark, and handsome, and now he's just on the morning show. And she's going to be on that at 10 o'clock. And then Friday, April 9th, she is going to be at Ammo Can Coffee in Soldotna from 7:30 to 9.
Go, Jason Floyd.
Yeah, Jason Floyd is the owner of that, and he is the chief of staff, I believe, for Representative Gilman or Ron. And so just a great, unique opportunity for you to go in Soldotna and hang out with Kelly at Ammo Can Coffee. At 11 to noon, she is going to be at the lovely Nikiski Hardware and Supply out here in Nikiski.
Wait. Ooh, ah. Hey, go, John, quick. Nice score. You got Kelly Tshibaka coming to your hardware store.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be exciting. So she's going to be there for just an hour or so. And anybody out in Nikiski is more than welcome to come on down. From 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, she's going to be in the Nail Check at the Thai restaurant there. And then from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., she's going to be back in Soldotna at the Catch restaurant for another meet and greet. And then Saturday, April 10th, she's going to be rounding out her Kenai Peninsula meet and greet at the Land's Inn in Homer.
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
Saturday, April 10th from 3 to 4:30. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there. There's 4 or 5 events and a radio show for folks to either meet Kelly or call in and have her answer some questions. It's going to be an exciting time for folks on the Kenai. I can't remember the last time Lisa did something like that here. And so way to go, Kelly.
Yeah, this might not be Lisa territory, quite honestly. Kelly's got a lot of supporters down there on the Kenai, and so does Governor Dunleavy. So Dunleavy's be down there on the Kenai, I believe Tuesday, and I think he's got some announcements he's making. That's what I've heard. And of course, that Kelly is coming down there Thursday. She'll be, I mean, if she's on the Dwayne Bannock show, I went on his show once. Let me tell you, that was a ton of fun. He is so good at that show. He's so poised, and he's just got the thing down. And then, of course, I love going over to Ammo Can Coffee and having coffee with people there. Always good people at that place. And last time I was on the peninsula, I was right there in your store, Nikiski Hardware. In fact, I think I have a picture of myself in there. And you've got a great little coffee shop there.
Yep.
And so that'll be fun. But then, of course,
There's one more event too. I forgot.
Oh, what's that?
Senator Peter Murkowski is going to be at the Kenai Borough Assembly meeting tomorrow at the Borough Building. And he's going to be answering questions during the assembly. And then after the assembly meeting, he's going to be also having a time where you could ask him questions as well.
So the president of the Senate is coming to the Borough Assembly meeting on Tuesday, you're saying?
Yes.
And what's the time again?
The time, I believe the borough meeting starts at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And just right there in Soldotna. And that's open to the public. I think they have it on Zoom as well. So, and the cool thing about the Zoom, at least for the borough, is you can show up in person, but if you don't feel comfortable because of COVID or you're traveling or, the borough building is 100 miles away, the assembly clerk has set up the Zoom so where you can actually ask questions via Zoom as well, which is great.
That's really great. Well, great. And Peter Murkowski, of course, Senate president this year, doing a fantastic job, keeping a great relationship with both the governor and also treating the minority Democrats really well and showing a lot of leadership under pressure, because not everybody in his Republican caucus has made it easy for him. And boy, I tell you, there are times when I think if I'd have been the Senate president, I'd pull out every last hair I had.
I'd last about 4 days probably as Senate president.
Yeah. I'd be knocking heads together by now. I'd probably be a little bit more like a Mike Shower type Senate president. But Peter Murkowski is very understanding, and he tries to work with the team he has. Hey, I wanted to mention to you something about this statewide poll that was released by this Signal group today. And of course, we're taping the show on Monday, and it's April 5th. But Signal, it's spelled Cygnal, but pronounced Signal. And they did a poll across Alaska for Kelly Tshibaka or Lisa Murkowski, who do you want? And I was really shocked. I was absolutely shocked at the unfavorable rating that Lisa has with Republicans. I mean, it's almost 90% unfavorable. Negative rating for Lisa is 87% and only 10% positive with Republicans. That is, I don't know that there's another person in the country, another lawmaker in the country who's got a negative factor that high. Now, I knew that her negatives were pretty high stateside, down in the lower 48. Republicans do not like Lisa Murkowski. They see her as a traitor. But up here, a lot of people know her. She's been around since the late 90s doing, she was in the House of Representatives, and then she was appointed in 2002 to that seat. And so she's been there almost 20 years, and people know her. They know the family, and she's got sisters, and she's got a lot of contacts. Of course, there were good things about her, because she was the one person in DC who stood up for Ted Stevens when he was being accused. And so she got a lot of credit for that. But boy, I tell you, I thought she would be in better standing, John, than she is. She's at 87% unfavorable. I suppose on the Kenai it'd be even worse.
Oh yeah, on the Kenai, it's 97 or something like that. It's almost like a swear word to bring her name up around here, because people are so disappointed in the time after time letting them down they thought they were at least electing a somewhat conservative and that has not been the case. And I think what you're seeing from that big percentage is people are just fed up. Now, will they vote is the question, because oftentimes you see people fed up and they're fed up and they're fed up. And then the opposite team figures out how to flood the news with stuff that doesn't matter. And then you soon forget about it. And then it comes election day or election week or whatever you want it to happen. And we find ourselves being busy with jobs, kids, sporting events, all these other things. And the biggest question in my mind is, will people vote? And the other thing that we've seen also this week is a very coming out in supportive of Lisa Murkowski is Senator Dan Sullivan, which I think a lot of people are disappointed in him for doing that. I think it's one thing to say, if I support Lisa as a friend, or I support Lisa in running, but it's another thing to say that I'm going to be supportive of her regardless of who runs against her, or however he framed it. And I think that I've talked to a lot of, I get to talk to a lot of everyday conservatives. Owning a hardware store lends itself to that. Being one of the owners of a hardware store lends itself to that. And you get to hear from people, the everyday Joe, who's just in Alaska trying to make ends meet, and has a family or whatever. And that person is disappointed in Senator Dan Sullivan for making a stance like that. They like him outside of that, but I think that's been a big kind of kick in the gut for a lot of folks.
It's interesting because Sullivan did come out with that statement saying that he would support Lisa in her run for reelection if she chose to run. And none of us know if she is actually going to run, although she did start her mailers, her emails, requests for funds a few days before Kelly Tshibaka announced that first request for campaign donations came out from, quote, Team Lisa. But he said he'd support her if she ran. And yet the Republican Party has asked her not to run as a Republican. They don't want her to run as a Republican, and they vowed to find another candidate. And lo and behold, they have. And so now this puts him in the awkward position of supporting somebody who has been disowned by the Republican Party. I think that's very awkward for him. And he's going to have to sort of thread the needle on this, because that's not a really great position to put himself in. So we'll see. It might have been a mistake on his part. Maybe he didn't understand the possibility that the Alaska Republican Party could actually have somebody that they nominate by convention that will be their official candidate. So they might have to have a convention where they actually nominate their own candidate and then bring that forward and say, this is our nominee formally from our party. And if they do that from the party at the local level, then I'm talking about the state party, that puts the national RNC in a tough position to back Lisa. They won't. They're not going to go against the grassroots, because if there's one thing that the Republican Party is, it is a grassroots organization. Because like you said before, the thing about Republicans or conservatives is, they'll jump in, they'll engage, and then they want to go back to work, and they want to get things done in their lives. They want to build things. They want to create things. They like to create wealth. They like to take care of their families, go to church. They like to go to soccer games and hockey games. And so they don't engage all the time. The RNC can't afford to alienate the grassroots.
I agree. I think that I look at this and I just think it's going to be like Alaska needs jobs. Alaska needs opportunities. Alaska needs to be prospecting for more oil. They need to be pumping out more oil. They need to be doing a bunch of things. And instead of doing all that, we're going to be, focusing on election, which is great. But I think that if I'm in Dan Sullivan's seat, or if I'm in Lisa Murkowski's seat, Alaska still wants to know, how are you going to get Alaskans jobs? How are you going to shore up our economy? How are you going to have COVID not infiltrate every nook and cranny of everything we're trying to do to have, COVID vaccine passports? There are little things that I think that you could, that Alaskans are really dying for you to talk about. And we'd love for those things to make the front page news, and for those things to be the things that you lead with, as opposed to worrying about, who's going to run for what. Sometimes I think that it's important, but oftentimes you forget, get out of your bubble. The average person in Alaska needs jobs. We need our economy back. We need to stop talking about COVID. How are you going to help that happen? Until you can give me those points, have fun in your little nook of the world. But that's the things that people really care about. And all this other nonsense is just, icing on the cake, I guess.
I was talking to the guy who did the poll. His name is Brock McCleary at Signal. And he said he had never seen a candidate so upside down with their voters, because he's polled in Alaska before. And his polling company is one of these top rated polling companies in the country. In fact, the New York Times said it was the #1 private polling company in the country. But Brock said that he'd never seen a candidate in such a poor position going into her reelection or a reelection. So that puts Kelly Tshibaka in a pretty good position. Of course, she's only been at this for a week. So she's been running since last Monday. And so there's a lot of game left. Let me tell you, it's a year and a half away before the general election. And of course, what they did is interesting on this poll is they polled in the environment that we're actually going to be in. They didn't just poll Republicans, they just polled all voters, because they're looking for likely primary voters. And with our ballot measure 2, everybody goes to the poll and there's one big ballot. You don't get to say like the Republican ballot or the Democrat ballot. You pick just one ballot and everybody's on there. So that's a big change for us. We've never done it this way. So we're going to, find out how strong she is amongst all voters. And that's what he was polling for. How strong is she amongst all voters? And amongst all voters, it wasn't, she wasn't very good. It was about 63 against, and unfavorable with her, and 33 favorable. 33 favorable was pretty low. I think Donald Trump nationally and at his lowest point was in the 40% unfavorable or 40% favorable. So she's not that strong right now with 63% unfavorable amongst the general population. So be very interesting to see what happens next. Now, you mentioned Kelly's going to the Kenai, and she's got this big tour in front of her. I heard somebody last week say, yeah, she peaked on her second day of her campaign, but I don't see this as a peak. I mean, my goodness, she was in Breitbart this morning. She was on Politico this morning. She was on Lars Larson's show on Friday. There's some things happening. Her name recognition apparently is up, because my goodness, you've got with Lisa unfavorable at 87%. Well, that just puts Kelly in a really good spot for a hungry voter who wants change. So be really interesting.
The thing I think that is going to be the curveball that I don't think anybody except for maybe people living in Maine could even remotely understand is ranked choice voting. I think that Alaskans are going to show up to this particular ballot box, and they're going to have the Murkowski race, the Don Young race, the governor race, and in particular with the Don Young and the Murkowski race, they're going to see a ballot like they've never seen in their entire life before. And a lot of people, like the average person, doesn't pay attention to any of this stuff. They literally don't pay attention. And even if you're the above average person and you pay attention to some of it, it's hard to understand ranked choice voting. This thing that we voted on last September, it was like 60 pages or whatever. And they had amendments in there that went in after the fact that the thing was submitted. And I don't think the average person has any idea, myself included, and I just know a little bit about it, of the effects that ranked choice voting is going to be having on Alaska. So I think some of this, if I'm in Senator Murkowski's camp, I'm thinking, well, none of this stuff really matters because we got ranked choice voting and they're going to do all the science. Lisa Murkowski's team is going to do all the science behind ranked choice voting, and they're going to do all of the avenues in which exactly who to vote for. And they're going to let their people know probably exactly who to vote for in this ranked choice voting system. And unfortunately, unless the Republicans get their stuff together, I don't see that happening. And what's going to happen is the average person, I think, that's going to go to the poll or the ballot box is going to look at this and be like, I'm not voting for these other people. I only like Kelly Tshibaka. Why would I vote for Begich? Why would I vote, or, Mark Begich? Why would I vote for Lisa Murkowski? Why would I vote for, Joe Blow down here at the end of the list? I just want to vote for Kelly Tshibaka. Well, if you just vote for Kelly Tshibaka and Kelly doesn't get an X amount of percentage, it's going to go to a runoff and your ballot is going to be thrown out because you did not sufficiently fill out the ranked choice voting form and pick your other two choices. And I think that unless the Republican Party does some serious educational work on what this means for this particular race, that Murkowski's camp is looking at all this stuff and not really caring because they're going to outsmart the other team.
It's very tricky because you pick your favorite candidate. Let's say Lisa's your favorite candidate. Who's your second favorite on that ballot? Let's say Mark Begich runs and Kelly Tshibaka is on that ballot. So your favorite candidate is Lisa Murkowski. Who are you going to pick for second? Are you going to pick Kelly or are you going to pick Mark Begich? So some Lisa voters will pick Mark Begich and some might pick Kelly. Now, if Kelly's your first choice, who's your second choice? Your second choice, if Kelly's your first choice, Mark Begich is not going to be your second choice. Maybe Lisa will be your second choice, but like, what if there's an Alaska Independence Party person running?
Bob Byrd.
Yeah, maybe Bob Byrd will be your second choice because like might look more conservative than Lisa. So it's tricky because whoever gets the most second votes might be the one who wins. The person who gets all the first choice for people might not be the one who wins. It might be that everybody had somebody for their second choice and that person wins. It's a really tricky thing. And it's going to be especially hard for older voters who are just used to being able to say, I vote for this person or I vote for that person. They are not going to particularly understand that they're ranking it. And then it goes into this big calculator and it's a machine that counts it. And you never get to see a hand audit. It cannot be audited. So what we put in place here as voters in Alaska is a really wild system. Be interesting to see if anybody ever has the courage and stamina to try to unwind this ballot measure 2, because it is going to, I think, probably reduce the confidence that people have that their votes will really count. Hey, before we go, I wanted to ask you about this, how we're doing with this vaccine passport thing. It's, we could talk about this for a whole show. We might have to.
Yeah.
But I'm really studying this because I see that, Israel has a passport now and Hawaii has a hybrid kind of a vaccine passport. New York has rolled one out. It's a QR code you put on your phone. And that means you can go to public events. And I even saw something today where Alaska Industrial Hardware is requiring all of its employees to be vaccinated, which is really an interesting, we're starting to see it invade our world. The Biden administration, I know, and private companies are all over the place putting credentials on people and issuing these types of passports. Boy, woe be the person who loses their vaccine card. They could just be completely shuttered out of even their job.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I think that one of the things that I really love about the governor of Florida is he recently did an executive order, and I quote in his executive order, section 2 says, businesses in Florida are prohibited from requiring customers to provide any documentation certifying COVID vaccinations or post-transmission recovery to gain access to your business. And it goes on to talk about some other things about prohibiting this COVID passport. And I think if the governor is listening, Governor Dunleavy, this could be your time to shine, because conservatives voted you in. We appreciate the work you're doing. We're sick and tired of hearing about COVID. If we're honest, we don't really need another COVID press conference. What we need is an executive order from the governor saying that you are going to disavow this COVID passport, and literally just take what the governor in Florida did and transpose it into what works for Alaska, and you will have a ridiculous amount of support from conservatives. Because
that's great, yeah.
we are worried we're not going to be able to travel. We're worried that we're not going to be able to go from city to city. We're worried that we're going to lose our jobs. We're worried that folks that are working up on the slope, that they're not going to be able to maintain their employment status there because somebody has a religious reason that they don't want to get a COVID vaccination, which is a very real reason. And unless that, I don't see the House or the Senate doing it because it's such a mess, unfortunately. Unless the governor does some sort of executive order, we are going to be seeing more and more of this COVID passport nonsense in Alaska. Somebody's got to put their foot down, and the only person that has the authority to do that is the governor.
Interesting. And so you raise a really good point, because we were going to have Kathy Tilton, Representative Tilton, on our show today, and we were going to ask her about that. I had this, that's one of the things I planned to ask her is, hey, how about some legislation prohibiting companies and organizations in the state from requiring vaccinations of their employees? But of course, with Louise Stutz as our House Speaker, they could not get their meeting going on time. They can't get any of their meetings going on time. And today was no different. They went over. And so Kathy had to take a rain check on the show, but the governor himself could do this. He could either put legislation forward, or perhaps, hey, how about his executive order? Sue me. What are you going to do? You're going to force me to say that we can't, that you're going to go against me and say that these vaccine passports are going to be required? I don't think so. I'd love to see him do that. Yeah,
let him. If you're listening, Governor, and if one of the things is you're worried about, losing another case in the court of liberal opinion in Alaska, right, then don't worry about that. The simple act that you would defend somebody's right to not want to get a COVID vaccine by doing something like this is a huge win. And if it gets thrown out in court, it gets thrown out in court. But I think this is what people in Alaska who elected you are waiting for you to do. They've seen the press conferences. They've seen all that stuff. They want you to step up to the plate and stick up for them in a way that they can't. And when I say the House and the Senate are a mess, I mean that literally the House is a mess and the Senate is together, but they would never be able to put something together because they don't see eye to eye on this stuff. Senator Murkowski could probably pull something together in a week, but the House wouldn't do anything about it.
Exactly.
And so the governor is the last man standing to do something about this, even if it's for the mere fact that it lasts for a month until it makes it through the courts. I think that this could be a huge win for the folks that entrusted you to be governor over a great state of Alaska.
Right. And now that House Bill 76 is making its way through the House and it makes everything retroactive, the governor could do it retroactively. Why not? And I see that. Yeah, I'd see the Biden administration is definitely working on a vaccine passport, and they're not talking about it too openly, but they're having a lot of meetings on it, and they're talking about digital certificates that would allow you to travel. And I know the European Union's working on it too, and so World Health Organization is involved. It looks like it is IBM is involved. I tell you, between IBM and big tech, these guys are changing our entire society into something that we're not going to be able to recognize. Well, that is going to about be it for today. Boy, that went fast. I hope that we can get Kathy Tilton on the show next week, and we'll talk about the budget then, and we'll talk about whether or not House Bill 76 is actually going to go anywhere and whether the governor will veto it. But for now, if you want to get more stuff on Must Read Alaska, you can get the newsletter by signing up for it. You can go to the website, mustreadalaska.com, and be sure to tune in to our Wednesday show. Scott Levesque is our midweek show host, and he does a great job. And if you're a supporter, thank you so much. It makes it possible for us to get this show up and to get all the conservative news out the door. The donate button is on the right side at mustreadalaska.com. And you supporting this project allows us to stay independent, thoughtful against the big blue wave of liberal media. So until next time, John, we're signing off from somewhere in Alaska.